Hello everyone, my name is Louise Fernandez and I am accompanied by Albert Layasan, and today we are going to talk about the color game and how the principles of accessibility is being applied to it. The goal of this presentation is to view the color game and to analyze the considerations and design applications that the website has according to the principles of designing accessible interfaces. First of all, we are going to talk about the four principles of accessibility in detail. Then we are going to tackle all about the color game, what the common tasks are that the users can do, and how the site supports users with disabilities. Then lastly, we are going to tackle how the site applies the considerations in designing an accessible interface. Now, the four principles of web accessibility, more commonly known as the POUR principles, are guidelines that help improve the interaction and satisfaction of the users when browsing websites. POUR stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. The first principle we are going to tackle is perceivability, which is how digital content can be interpreted or processed effortlessly and in different ways. Starting at the most basic level, users must be able to process information. Information that is not presented in a processable format is not accessible. And among other affordances, this means providing text for those who cannot hear and audio for those who cannot see. It does not mean creating audio for all text, but content must be consumable by screen readers and other assistive technologies. Websites and apps that require sight or hearing won't pass the test of perceivability. However, the color game is exempted from this as the purpose of the website is specifically catered to people who do not have eye disabilities or only have color blindness. Guidelines to perceivable interface include the use of orientation, identifying input purpose, which includes the use of autofills, identifying purpose, ergo icons should have labels within the code that assistive technologies can create. For example, a button that returns to the user to the main page should be labeled Home button. Reflow, which is the use of responsive design, non-text contrast, which assists users with low vision by creating a contrast ratio of at least 3 to 1 to active interface components and non-text content. Text spacing, content on hover or focus, which is massively used in today's websites, and captions and other multimedia alternatives. The next principle is operability, which talks about how digital product function can be controlled with ease and without confusion. People with disabilities need to be able to operate websites and applications with a variety of tools. Many users with disabilities cannot operate a mouse. Alternatives like keyboard-based operations should be implemented. To help users with cognitive disabilities operate a website, animations and media should be controllable, and time limits for completing an action should be generous or configurable. Most importantly, sites and apps should be forgiving. All people, not just with disabilities, make mistakes. Offer second chances, instructions, cancellation options, and warnings to help hold users. Guidelines on operable interface include the use of character key shortcuts, timeouts, where websites must inform users of how much time they have before inactivity leads to data loss, unless the time limit is longer than 20 hours, animation from interactions, pointer gestures, pointer cancellation, where users must be able to easily cancel an accidental down event such as click, tap, or long press, label in name, motion activation, which is functionality that is accessible through motions such as shaking your mobile device, must also be accessible through the user interface. Target size of at least 44 by 44 pixels for all interactables. And concurrent input mechanisms, where users should be able to switch between multiple input mechanisms such as touch, keyboard, mouse, and speech. The third principle is understandable, which talks about how a user can understand how the interface functions, and the information within. If users can perceive and operate a website, that doesn't mean they can understand it. Understandable websites use clear, concise language and offer functionality that is easy to comprehend. If a user takes an action, the connection between the action and the result should be obvious. Navigation should be used consistently across a site. Forms should follow a logical flow and provide clear labels. If a user must go through a process, like a checkout, adequate guidance should be provided. And if this feels like usability and not accessibility, that's because usable websites are inherently more accessible. Understandability is particularly important for three types of people with disabilities, that is, people with visual disabilities who rely on screen readers and braille displays to understand the text of a website, people with learning disabilities who have difficulties with long, complex sentences and advanced vocabulary words, and people with cognitive disabilities who have difficulties on focusing on long paragraphs of text. Understandability is also divided into three areas of concern. First is readability. Some people with disabilities experience challenges when recognizing written words or when inferring the meaning of a word from context. Your web content should make this process as easy as possible by identifying the language or languages that the text is written in as well as any unusual words or abbreviations. Lastly, input assistance. People with disabilities and the assistive technologies they use often make mistakes more easily when entering information. In order for them to understand the problem and correct the issue, websites should provide better error messages and help prevent errors whenever possible. Last but definitely not the least is robust, which talks about how the digital product's compatibility with different assistive technologies. Users pick their own mix of technologies. And within limits, websites should work well enough across platforms, browsers, and devices to account for personal choice and user need. While users cannot expect a website to support Internet Explorer 1.0, sites should not dictate the technology users can use. When sites dictate supported technology platforms, they restrict access for any non-conforming user. One of the best ways to meet the principle of robustness is to follow development standards and conventions. Clean code is generally more robust and consumable across platforms. Judging a website's robustness is divided into three criteria. The first criterion is parsing. The content and code of your website should be well formed. For example, content written in a markup language such as HTML or XML should have complete start and end tags and should nest elements correctly. This will help prevent display errors and problems with assistive technologies. The second criterion is name, role, and value. User interface components such as form elements can have their name and role programmatically determined by an assistive technology. In addition, people with disabilities can use assistive technologies to set values, properties, and states on your website. The last criterion is status messages. Many websites make use of dynamic content such as status messages that are written in markup languages such as HTML or XML. This content must be presented to users of assistive technologies without necessarily receiving a visual focus. For example, if users are viewing their social media feeds, they can be alerted of a new post without the browser automatically scrolling up to display it to them. And that ends my topic. The next topic is going to be the color game and how the principles of accessibility is applied to it. To discuss that, I'm going to pass the spotlight to my mate Albert Layasan. Thank you.
Hello, this is Albert Layasan, and I will be talking about the website we chose for the or um accessibility interface report. So the website we chose is called Color Game. You can access this website through the link shown on the screen, which is color.method.ac. This is the interface of the welcome interface of the website. And so this will be short and quick, as there is not really much to talk about this website aside from it is a game. So the color game was created by Method of Action, a collaboration between Maria Monuera and Mark McKay. The Method of Action develops tools, toys, and games to assist users in learning design. So if you go into their website, which is accessible also in the Color Game website, you can see a lot of tools that cater for designers' needs. So the color game requires players to use a color wheel to match the colors they see. This is helpful for designers to practice um, their perception of colors. If they are familiar with the colors they see. Okay. So it provides increasing difficulty by matching colors based on hue, saturation, complementary, and so on. So the game also provides a solution for players who have color perception deficiencies. So for color blinded people, they integrated a solution that allows them to still play the game. So this is why we chose this website, as gives players with color perception deficiencies a chance to still play a color game, which they are having a hard time to do as they are color deficient. So the game utilizes shapes that morph based on the primary colors hue and saturation. So as you, I will demo later what the game looks when it is being played normally, and with the for the color perception color blind people na assist. And so before we go on the application of the principles, I will show you how the website looks. So as you can see, this is the website. You can see that as I move my mouse around the color wheel, the color selector moves also according to where my mouse is, allowing me to choose the colors. So here there's an option before we start to calibrate my screen to see the colors. So you should be able to see the difference in the colors in the inner box and the outer box of this green, for example. And so here is the colorblind assist. For this demo, I will turn this on, as you can play with colorblind assist and normally simultaneously. So people with color blindness can play using this. People that have no difficulty seeing colors can still play with this and through the color wheel. Okay, so let's start the game with colorblind assist. So the first game is based on hue. So as you can see, as I move my mouse over the color wheel, the shape here also morphs. So I should match the color that is being given here. So for example, I will match this color somewhere here. So it says it's good. So if I match, if I focus my attention on the color, I can get a more accurate result like this. So as for okay, I will continue playing for a while until the second level, which is for saturation. So in this will allow you to get the colors by saturation and by hue. So yeah, this is how the game is played primarily. So it also shows the basic type of shape. So if the target says triangle, you can immediately go here to locate uh, the color that the game wants you to match. So this is how the color game works. And so for the application of principles, first, as discussed by Mark, the first one is perceivable. So the other text in the website is in grayscale. The one that tells us that we can play the game in colorblind mode. So it is in grayscale to give more emphasis on the color wheel. So it is easy to understand that users should select a color in the color wheel to match the color given. So that is how the game is intended to be played. So it is immediately recognizable by first time users. The tabs below show the level on which the player is currently playing. So as you have noticed earlier, there is a tab below that shows if we are playing the hue level, the saturation level, and so on. So the timer is integrated into the color wheel. So um, as you can see, the timer is integrated into the color wheel, adding more difficulty as your reference colors fade over time. So you can see earlier that the colors shrink over time. That was the color your mouse is currently hovering on, so it should match the color of the background. So it gives more challenge to the players. As for operable, the game is mainly played on PC as it is easier to move color selector with the mouse and it is more precise. However, the game is still playable in other devices like mobile and touch devices. So hyperlink text can be hover focused. I didn't show. Okay. So for example, here, this one, you can see that the mouse icon changes as I hovered over hyperlinks. So including this where it shows us that we can start the game, the mouse icon changed. And the color selector is in an easily recognizable size. So around the size of this highlight here in Canva, around this size, the color wheel selector, it's almost in the same size as this. As for understandable, the game is catered to users with color perception disabilities. So unfortunately, the game can't be played by people who are blind, but this game can still be played by players who are having a difficulty in their hearing. As long as the player or the user have no other difficulty in their sight, uh, except from blindness, full blindness, and as long as they can select the colors shown, so those players can still use the game and enjoy it. And because this is a game, users can replay it and apply what they learned from previous playthroughs. So on your first try of this game, it's not really that you get the high score every time, as you will try to move around and try to find the colors that being shown. So as you play the game, you get more familiar with the color you use, the how colors are being complemented with each other, being analogous with each other, something like that. And for robustness, the game is also playable on mobile devices and other browsers. So if you're playing in a different screen ratio, like a mobile device or a tablet or a laptop and other devices, this game can still be played. Although playing with a mouse is still a lot better, as it is more easier to select the colors with it. but using a stylus and maybe using touch devices like your finger, um, I think it can still I don't know, easy to play the game and win. The game can still be played using touch devices and stylus. Yeah. So there is nothing really much to talk about the game, as it is just a simple website. It is just a website of color matching, and for the the principles that are no, I have discussed earlier. So that's all. Thank you for watching our report. And again, this is me, Albert Layasan, and earlier my partner, Mark Luis Fernandez. Thank you and have a good day.